So, C, what's the next one we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, you just keep going through them and I'll see if I've got any thoughts on them.
The next one, Steve, I'm not sure it's a conspiracy. Because it's currently being litigated, I'm not sure whether we want to find someone guilty or not before potentially that is the case in court. They're innocent until proven guilty, as the district attorney of Georgia said, or whatever she is, Fannie Wilson. 2020 election. Now, we have to be careful here. There's a lot of stuff that has already almost been agreed to be not truthful. And I will ask people to go and research the Dominion lawsuit. I don't want to say any more. But there was the thought that it was false voting. Machines were deleting certain votes, that mail-in vote was defrauded, and that votes were being counted from people who had already dead. So we have to be careful, because this is a country that I don't live in. The system was not taking away my vote. And when America sneezes, everyone else catches cold. So have you got anything to say about the 2020 election?
These are the sorts of things that I want to know a little bit more about, not so much the outcome, but could things have caused an outcome that was false? Could they? And would there be motive for that? Would there be reasons for people to do that? I always veer on the side of, well, yeah, there's always potential motive and reasons for people to do certain things, and people in power want to retain power, and that means that if they can see an angle that is going to help them retain power and somebody else not get into power, or get somebody out of power that they want out of power, then there's always things that can be done. But to be honest with you, mate, I'm really not sure about anything in American politics because of the way that American politics is set up. Everything is driven by money. And we've had this discussion around, money before, and that it's the cause of a lot of crap in the world. As I understand it anyway, that the way that the politics works in the States is heavily driven by lobbyists. And lobbyists run from big companies that inject a lot of money. If you can get the right senator under your wing, you get a lot of money injected into that senator's, not only their personal pocket, potentially, but also into one of the parties, whether that be Republican or Democrat. So I think that wherever there's a lot of money being injected, there's always a hell of a lot of room for massive corruption, and whatever that looks like. So how that gets manifest, I really don't know. Like I'd love to think that the moon landing really did happen. I would love to think that democracy really works. I'd like to think that, continue to think that until it's proven otherwise. So that's my long-winded way of dodging the question, really.
I trust I make myself obscure.
I trust I do.
That's a quote from A Man for All Seasons, who was in a very similar position, that Henry VIII wanted Thomas More to agree to his divorce, and he wouldn't have it, but he had to give some statement, and he made it so obscure that... What did he say? Does he agree? And this is similar with this one, I think, because you're absolutely correct.
And I think it's really important that while, being an ex-police officer, while these things are going before a court, even though we're not in that country, I just think it's worth just letting the dust settle over that and see what comes out of the court. Concerns that I would have about any form of judiciary at the moment are whether the judiciary are sufficiently apolitical enough, or whether the judiciary are going to come down on the side of one political avenue or another. I have limited confidence in certain countries that the judiciary are as sterile as they should be.
Why is that? Certain laws are plainly ridiculous. I'm assuming it's no longer the case now. But I think it was illegal in Ireland to own a suit of armour if you're Jewish. And it comes from the medieval period. And it was still on the statute books because law tends to be, well, certainly in Ireland and the UK, it's casuistic, it's case by case. And eventually governments can change laws, as you know, and it could alter. Suddenly you could have a date where it's illegal to do something, and then the following day law comes in and it's perfectly okay. You can still be arrested a minute before the law comes in, supposedly. So things do change and alter over time. But you would assume that whatever the law is always being followed by certainly the Supreme Court or the High Court or whatever. But you're right. I'm not sure now whether even that is the case with a lot of countries. It seems that the way you observe some of the judges acting, it's almost so they can make up what they want.
That's right. And that is probably my bigger concern about anything. And so therefore, if anybody then goes to trial, are they likely to get a fair trial? I would like to think that they would, and I would like to think that, especially in a country like America, that lauds itself for being standing on the moral high ground for lots of things, I would like to think that there would be a fair trial for all concerned. And I'm always mindful, of the comment that was made in that court when I was at Crown Court prosecuting one particular case, which was quite weird in lots of areas. And the judge turning to the jury and saying, ladies and gentlemen, despite what you may have heard and how that might conflict with your personal ethics and values and all the rest of it, this is a court of law. This is not a court of morals. And the law is what we will need to apply, not whether you like it or whether you don't like it. And I think that as long as the law is applied and as long as the judge, whoever presides over these cases, implements the letter of the law and not inference or gives it an undue spin because actually they're Republican or they're Democrat or whatever they are. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that's going to send a very interesting signal.
If a system has deliberately been, I don't know what the right word is, defrauded? Is that too hard, too soft?
Or manipulated.
Manipulated. It requires thousands, tens of thousands, and then it requires millions to believe it. So to get to the point of 2020 didn't happen overnight. This would have gone back decades to get people to accept that you can't trust the voting or your own vote. Don't forget, it wasn't long ago, certainly in the UK, the late 90s, people were worried that they weren't bothering voting at all. How do we get people to vote? Some countries, it's a legal requirement to vote.
I think it is in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. What I don't understand, and this is an odd question, only you can answer this, Steve. In my experience when I lived in the UK, I don't remember many cases where a defendant could go out and deliberately manipulate the media to his or her own advantage before a trial. Would that have been allowed?
No, because there would have been no discussion around it, because it'd be prejudicial to the case.
So why is it happening all the time then in the States?
I don't know.
Is it the First Amendment, the one that you can't take your voice away?
Oh, is it the right to speech?
Yeah.
Under their constitution, it's allowed, and somebody from America might be able to fill us in a bit more on that. But certainly you would not be looking at having any discussions in public to any great degree, and you certainly wouldn't if you're the defendant. If you're the defendant and being pulled up there before the court, you're not going to be standing up there bumping your gums about this, that and the other, because everything that you put out there could be actually turned against you, and you've only got to make one false comment, and that would be used by the prosecution to rip you apart. So you'd never want to do that.
This seems a power play much wider than one person, one case.
This is a very odd time, I think, in American politics, from what I can see, and I do not know enough about American politics. There is so much stuff that's been alleged about the current president and his family, which is almost swept under the counter. And yet this other president, who's been charged with all these offences, based on whatever they are, and I think to myself, hang about a minute, it doesn't seem to be equal here. There doesn't seem to be the same level of scrutiny given to this one as there was to this one, which then makes me ask, why? Why is that? Why would that be? Because that doesn't smack to me of being honest. If it doesn't smack to me of being honest, then it generates doubt.
That's half of what they're trying to achieve, or people want. They want doubt. They want it so that you conflate one with another. You compare one with another. I don't want to get into Democrat, Republican, because we're not American. And although that fills the bandwidth quite a lot, I am aware of Hunter Biden and how it seems to be sucking out the oxygen in the Republican room. But he's not the president.
No, he's not. Level playing field when it comes to how you deal with people when you investigate stuff. If somebody has broken the law, they have broken the law. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter where they've come from. So if there is a crime for you to take something out of a school and you do it, and the same rules apply to me and I do it, but only you are the one that's pulled up for it when they know about both of us, that's not right.
I think you're referring to Mar-a-Lago and the documents, aren't you?
Well, it could be.
So he was no longer then the president. He was asked by I think it's the archives, who said, can we have these back? And he wouldn't do it. Biden is in office. So if they've found documents, just like they would have found documents when Trump was in office, I think executive privilege or whatever, the fact that he's in the office, they weren't prepared to say to Trump, we're going to get you while you're in office. It was after. Well, then that may happen to Biden. If it's proven that if he's done something similar, or they are the same kind of documents that he should not have had, then obviously he will be brought to account. But they're probably not doing that at the moment because he's in office. Just like they didn't do it. I know they indicted him. But this is the problem. They are unclear. So that people like us who do not live in the States can only look on and think, what's happening here? You're saying one thing for one person, another, and then one news outlet will say, yeah, but what about this? And it's like it just becomes a mess.
I don't have enough friends over in the States to actually get a really good steer on this either. And I certainly don't have enough friends in the States who are from differing political backgrounds to give you stereo sound, one in each ear, so that you can at least draw some conclusions from it. So I'd be really interested. I'd be really interested to see what people think, and I'll be really interested to hear what people think about that. I'm interested to see the outcome, because whatever the outcome is could have a significant knock-on effect for whoever comes into power next time.
Yeah, but not just them, it's us. What happens in this case will affect the world. Because we're looking at America now and we're saying, why is this taking so long? What kind of a judicial system? That's what I'm asking.
The timing is a bit sketchy, isn't it? Yeah, why now? Why now? Why now? Because it smacks of, well, hang about a minute, you could have done this earlier, and you're trying to take out your rival now. Even if that's not what they're trying to do, that's the way it looks. When you have a conflict of interest at work, you have an actual conflict of interest, or you have a perceived conflict of interest. And a perceived conflict of interest, you need to be very careful with. And there seems to me to be a perceived conflict of interest here in terms of trying to take out your political opponent before the elections come on. That smells. Whether it's happening or not is immaterial. It's a perception. That's the perception it leaves one with. Whether that's the truth in reality, that's a different ballgame. But the perception is sometimes as important as the actual reality.
Just to finish off, I've got no real say either on this because it's beyond my remit. My interest lies in the fact that it is the world superpower, or professes to be, and we look up to it as a guardian of democracy. That's certainly not the case right now, because if you're infighting, then what are you standing up for? And if half the nation want one thing and half the nation want the other, kind of a nation are you? You don't want 100% believing in everything. You want a healthy split, but this is different. This is the law. Why is it taking so long? Why is it so convoluted? I can't imagine in the UK someone going to trial and then doing everything to delay it and delay it and delay it and getting away with it. It's like, oh, come on. Either law is a law or it's all down to who decides on the Supreme Court or the executive. It needs to be a bit clearer and a bit more level playing field.
The sad thing about this, Mark, is that whatever the outcome is, there's going to be no winners.
No, because the other people are going to be upset.
There's only going to be losers out of this, and that's the sad thing about it. And I think that what it will do is it will probably sharpen the divide that American society is already feeling. There are a hell of a lot of people that voted for Mr. Trump, as well as a good number who voted for Mr. Biden. Hell of a lot of people. And so if that sharpens that divide, that's a hell of a lot of people you've got on another side of the chasm, which you wouldn't be wanting to bring together. And a divided nation is always a problem. I don't see any winners out of this, irrespective of the outcome. And I'm not sure how it's going to go.
So our next topic, Steve, aliens. Not going across the border. These are an alien, non-human or possibly humanoid species. Are they amongst us? What do you think?
If we're talking little green men with little antennas and sucky fingers, then I would probably say, well, I don't believe that. Now, this is where we sort of stray into different sort of territory here. I believe in a world outside of the material world. So I believe that there is a spiritual realm, which means it is a realm that is unseen, which means it is a realm in which there are beings that can move, and that those beings can move across into our realm, i.e. the material realm. So I believe that there is an unseen realm. In that sense, then there are aliens, because that would be what an alien is. It's somebody who is not a terrestrial being, but an extraterrestrial being. So I believe that there is a dimensionality to the world, which is what I would call spirituality. How I see the spiritual world is dimensions. I believe that there are other dimensions that we cannot reach into in our current space-time world that we live in with the material world that we live in. And so because of that, that means obviously if I were to spiritualize that, that's like angelic beings. So would I say that they're angelic beings? Yes, I would. But what they are really, in my view, is they are from a different dimension to us because they're spiritual. And I think that's what spirituality is. It's dimensionality. It's a different dimension that beings can move within. And if that's the case, then they would have to be more advanced than us. They would have to be, because they can be us as well as be them. They can move into our realm, but we can't move into their realm, which means they can go our way, but we can't go their way while we are clothed in our material body. So I find the concept of dimensionality and the spirit realm very interesting. I find the concept of aliens on different planets and all of that sort of stuff, I don't believe. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think we have dimensions around us. So we have like concentric circles going out, and that's dimensionality, and that there is the potential to move across those dimensions. But that's what we would call in religious terms spirituality.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about the 5D, the fifth dimension, the non-physical, but I'm with you. And in fact, I was going to bring that up when we talk about ghosts, which is the final one we talk about. For me, if aliens don't exist, I actually would like them to, because I would love to meet them. Let's hook up, bring us your food, bring us your stories. There's a lot to mutually benefit each other. But could you imagine the first contact? I wonder whether it would be peaceful, because let's be honest, we're quite a violent species, whether we trust them or not. Would we accept them, or would we instantly go to war? I remember quite vividly, in fact, I was out in the Indian Ocean. I forgot what ship it was on. It was a moment in time where RAF Fylingdales suddenly had, and this was the height of the Cold War, supposedly blips on their radar. And they thought it was a load of Russian bombers coming in, which turned out to be migratory birds. There was a flash sent out to the ships, beware. And it was heightened, possibly close to Chernobyl. So we expected the worst, and that's my problem. We could have gone to war because of a load of birds. And let's be honest, for most of history, we don't seem to have had much thought about aliens. Listen to the History Channel, they would say otherwise. We've hated each other. That's been bad enough. So I would like to see the potential that there are aliens and hopefully come in peace, that we could learn from them. I ask myself, but why do we all see them as a threat? What is the threat that we fear? If they come and present themselves and open the doors and say welcome, well, they're not bombing us, are they? If they're already here, they could have blasted us from space, but I wonder if that would actually go through the thought processes for a lot of people who could push a button and destroy them instantly. I think they're already here. I don't believe in alien life in the sense of beings that are floating off out there in different planets and all of that. But I do believe in extraterrestrial life in the dimensions. So for me, that's a difference. But are they here?
Aliens are not here, but are angelic beings here? Are supernatural beings here? Are extra-dimensional beings here? I would say, yes, they would be. Are they always here? Probably not. Do they come and go? I would say yes. Have I got evidence of that? Nope. Have I got experience of certain things? Well, yes, because we've already discussed that on our other channel. But I certainly don't believe in aliens in like UFO spacecrafts and all of that sort of thing. I don't go with that. But from a dimensionality perspective, I could see that as being very viable.
Let's imagine that angels come to help us. There's a strange thing. I saw it on, probably a video, an old documentary. I think it was 1905, the Wright brothers. They went, 40 feet or something in a biplane. And then by 1914, they were fighting in the air. And then we had bombers. By 1941-42, we had jet engines. Now, if you had an upward curve about, the rise of technology, which most technology has, this thing stops and goes almost like vertical, straight away at one point. Why is that? How is it we managed to suddenly, within 15 years of the war, be on the moon? Now, that could have been human endeavour, or we could have been helped.
We could have been, yep. And being helped would never surprise me, but I would say that that wouldn't be by little aliens that are different. That would be by extra dimensional beings. I have a difference in the way that I would structure this, the angelic realm. They are the sons of God. This is where you go back to the mytho history of Greece and all the rest of it, where the Titans walked the earth and all of that sort of stuff. I have got no doubt in my mind that throughout the course of human evolution as a species, we have been assisted by sharper beings, by more technically advanced beings, in order to help us create and develop stuff. You've only got to look at the flipping pyramids to go, well, where did that knowledge come from? Who was helping build into that knowledge base? You look at all of the great advances and you think, so, well, how did that work and where did it come from? So for me to accept that there are potential for extra dimensional beings to actually assist people in that, however they materialize, whatever that looks like, wouldn't surprise me. But I struggle with the concept of life on other planets and all of that. Maybe I've got that totally wrong. Maybe the jump that I've made through extra dimensions is a far greater jump than life on other planets. Who knows? But the dimensionality just resonates really well for me personally within spirituality.
Well, it does for me. And in fact, I'm going to do something unusual. Before we come to a decision on this, I'd like to bring in the next topic, because I think it's almost linking in. It's ghosts.
Yep.
Now, you talk about non-dimensional spiritual beings. Well, if you come across them or you see them fleetingly and didn't know what they were, what are you going to call them? Ghosts? What could ghosts be? So, our bodies, 3-dimension. We see our bodies. We know that they're there within this 3D world. But we don't see our heat. We don't see it rising off my head. We don't see the radio waves in the room, but you can turn on or flick a switch and suddenly you hear music or someone talking. You don't think about it, it's all around us all the time. This is waves being broadcast from some distance. Our thought are waves and energy. Our mind is energy, but we don't see it. We're more than the physical. We have body, mind, and soul. Soul, is it in the body or is the body in the soul? Now, that's down to debate. So, for instance, if I was to walk into a room and you was there, Steve, our souls may touch each other before we shake hands. You either think that the soul is body-shaped, it doesn't leach out, so it's like a battery in which there's no electricity ever leaching out, or you see it like a battery with electricity leaching out and the soul's bigger than us. Radio waves exist externally to ourselves. So, for instance, if you go out into space, you can pick up radio waves that were blasted out in the 1930s, and they'll be continuing out to the far reaches of the galaxy forever. Well, what about mind? Our mind can move off, just like that, out of our bodies, and they can stay here on Earth. So our soul, if you go into a room, and you mentioned this earlier, and you come across a load of positive people, you can leave upbeat. But if you go into a room with negative people, you come out with a headache, feeling down. Well, what's causing that? It's energy. Energy of what they're putting out into the room. Energy does not die. It does not end. That's a brute fact of science. So if our mind, if our thought and our soul are energy, are ghosts energy?
Well, what are ghosts? Is it the disembodied energy from somebody who's no longer with us materially? Maybe it is. There is far more to us than just our material being, which is why I would sort of link into that dimensional thing. A ghost, what do we mean when we're talking about a ghost? If we're talking about the non-visible stuff that makes up a human being, forming either their spirit or their soul, depending on how you want to divide that, how does that get released and where does it go to once it's released? If you've ever seen somebody die, when they die, the light literally goes out of their eyes. It literally goes out of their eyes. You can see them go. So who is the they that's gone? Because the body is still there, but they are gone. Now, I believe that the they, whatever that is, goes from this realm into a different realm, into a different dimension, different spiritual dimension. How does that equate with ghosts? I'm not sure ghosts are the way that we view ghosts. if I'm going to make any sense about this. I think that we have a particular way of viewing ghosts. So the ghost is a ooh thing that floats around when somebody's dead, and it's there to haunt and to do all the rest of it. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if that's the way that's what a ghost is. That's what a ghost is, obviously, in our understanding. And a ghost is a disembodied spirit.
If the spirit goes off to another dimension, the question then is, can it still reside here? Or can it cross over those dimensions like the angelic beings you talked of? It always fascinates me is why people fear them. They're always posted as this poltergeist causing you distress. Britain's Most Haunted, they go down to dark places and your senses are heightened to almost like a simple breeze across your face. Oh, what was that? What's that famous line? Said, what was that? He said, it's the pipes, Derek. They're just rattling. If you went at night out in the Australian Kakadu National Park and there's water, you'd be bricking yourself that there may be an alligator there.
Crocodile.
A crocodile. Alligator? Crocodile. A croc is there. It's fear. It's the unknown. It's the expectation. And that's what seems to reside with a lot of these ideas of ghosts. I don't think ghosts are here to hinder us or trip us up. I do believe that there is dark energy. If I went into a room and had a real bad curry and then let one rip and then left the room, my presence would be in that room for some time. And I wonder if it's similar to spirit. Looking at all those books behind you, Steve, you've got to have some of your energy in those books.
I've got no doubt. I struggle with the concept of ghosts, but I don't struggle with the concept of supernatural beings. Now, that might sound oxymoron. Would that be right?
It's not an oxymoron. If an angelic spiritual presence comes into human form, have they entered into a human body?
Well, if an angelic being has come into material form, they are now in material form, but they are in a material form that only looks like. So it's a facsimile, it's a copy, but it's clearly not fully human in the sense that it is tied down to our dimension, because otherwise it would not be able to move back. It's an image of what a human is, but it's clearly not human in the sense that you and I are human. It can't be, can it? Because it can go back.
Right. So is it possible that an angelic being can come into this plane and not take human form?
And stay in spirit form. What we'd call spirit form, I guess.
And what some people would call a ghost.
Let's go back to angels. So angels is B'nai Elohim, so it's a direct creation of God, which means that it has a form and it has a shape, but it is a form and a shape that can materialize at will and transcend time and space. So clearly it's not a material body in the shape that we are. So we are sons of Adam, B'nai Ha'adam, and so we have a material form. Can an angelic being move into our realm in its angelic state and coexist amongst us? I don't know about that. It can move into our realm, but would it coexist? It would stand out like a forbidden pork chop in a synagogue, wouldn't it? You know, because it'd be so different. It'd be so different from us. Can it take our facsimile? Can it copy what we look like? Yes, it can, but then it wouldn't be truly human because it's just a copy of what we look like in order to get by and get through the day. But then it's got to be able to revert back to get back into its other dimension.
So is there a connection to our soul then? We have, as you would say, the breath of life breathed into us. Now, when our body dies and the soul goes off to wherever to go with God, you believe that as a Christian there's going to be a bodily resurrection. So
yes.
Is it a new body? Is it a facsimile body?
No, it's a new body.
Yes.
Right. So we would not look the same.
Not necessarily, not that we will be recognizable, but that doesn't mean to say that you're the same.
So the soul could then go back into a new body.
Depends on how you understand what the soul is. So I think that we are tripartite beings. We have a physical body. This that you can see as we're talking, that's my body. I have a soul, and my soul is made up of my mind, my will, and my emotion. That's my soul. But I also have a spirit, and it's the spirit that is the thing that lives on. The soulish area of your life is your mind, your will, your emotions. That's where you're wrestling between the spirit man and the body man. And your soul sits there in the middle, and it's constantly wrestling between the two, the spiritual and the physical. And so it's within your soulish area, your mind, your will, your emotions, that you will actually start to grow and develop, and you will become more spirit-like in the way that you present and live, or you'll become more human-like, body-like, physical-like, material-like. So you will either move more and develop more towards a spiritual awakening, or you'll move more to a materialistic awakening. You'll become more like one or the other as you live in this body. So I would say that the goal of a person is to allow the spirit man, because I believe that we are spirit contained in a body, as opposed to a body that contains a spirit. We live in a spiritual world. This is all a spiritual world, but we were encapsulated in a body. So we are a spirit in a body. While we have this spirit in a body, we have to work out how we live within the soul, our mind, our will, our emotions. So I'm not so sure that the soul goes on in the same way as the spirit goes on, but it shapes us.
Think about how this can link into ghosts, why some people would say they've seen an apparition or a ghost. And I don't know if this directly leads on from what you're just saying, Steve. I apologise. I've said before, I have a family member who is colourblind, can't see red and green, and therefore has to take it on faith that they exist. Now, we can see those colours. I can. I assume you can as well. Most people can. But there are people that can see things we can't see, like a slight aura around you, energy. I work with a young lass who, when you mention letters and numbers, sees colour. There's a name for it, something. The vast majority of us don't see heat unless it's like a mirage or rising from the surface of the road as little waves. But some people can see that all the time, and they can see other things. Terry Pratchett talks about the colour of magic. It's octarine, isn't it? Something like that magicians can see, no one else. So it's the idea that there are some people out there that can see spirit, could see your soul. I can't. I have to take it on faith that they exist. But the person I know that can do this has said anyone can do it, and you often see it out the corner of your eyes. When your eyes are relaxed, you're not really focusing. You may see a shadow move, something like that, or sense something. And when you look round, there's nothing there. And then you convince yourself, oh, it was just a shadow. It was just a shadow on the wall, or I had a mote in my eye. You'll come up with some excuse. No, what you're seeing is what some people can see all the time. Just like sometimes you can see a radiance of a colour that you've not seen before. Now, they could be angelic. They could be spirit. They could be the energy that we are transmitting, because you talked about the soul in the body. I don't know. But for some people, that's ghosts, because they've got no other words or framing to use.
Recognising that anything that sits outside of the material is always flagged up as ghosts by lots of people. From their perspective, ghosts obviously would exist. I would say that that's not necessarily a ghost. I would say that that's something different. So I'm not so sure about ghosts in the context of the way that it's understood in general parlance. I would say that there probably aren't such things as ghosts in that respect, but there are certainly things as spirits. Now, we might be talking the same thing, because you would call that a ghost, and I would say, well, it's not a ghost, but what it is a spiritual being of whatever flavour that is. Sure, how they would define what a ghost is. Look, you've got your interweb going. How's a ghost defined? What is a ghost? The definition of a ghost.
Oh, right. Okay, hang on. Okay, so I'm doing what you should not do, academia. I've gone to Wikipedia. And it says a ghost is a soul or a spirit of a dead person or non-human animal. The belief in the existence of an afterlife, well as the manifestations of the spirits of the dead, is widespread. It goes back ancient times. The word ghost continues the Old English gast. It's also found in Sanskrit. It's linked to fear. Funnily enough, I wouldn't go by what's in there. Does the Bible say anything about it?
It recognises that there are beings from the spiritual realm, the other dimension. It refers to them as ghosts. You know, when Peter is locked up in prison and he gets released by the angelic beings that release him, and he comes back and knocks on the door, and somebody looks through the door and goes, oh, it's his ghost, shuts the door and comes back and tells the people inside, oh, his ghost's outside. So there was clearly a belief that there was that. The Oxford Dictionary says that a ghost is an apparition of a dead person who is believed to appear or become manifest to the living, typically as a nebulous image. Maybe it's just a terminology, ghost, that doesn't sit particularly well with me. It's the dead person, isn't it? And with what I believe around the dead go to be wherever the dead go to be. So if you are a believer in this guy Jesus, you go when you die to be in Christ, which means, as far as I can see from that you're not wandering around in some uninhabited form jumping out and scaring people or going boo type of thing. You're not doing that. Those that die and are not in Christ, where do they go? Are they wandering listlessly around some murky grey area between the now and the then? I'm not sure that that's what Scripture teaches either. So again, I wouldn't be comfortable with sitting with any of that.
I think a lot of it's culturally based. You'll understand spirit ghosts differently. Just in life, where some people are dickheads, if your emotions are going to carry over, will that also mean you're going to be a dickhead in the afterlife? This is something I think it's rooted on belief as well.
Yeah, of course, because there'll be some people who are so materialistically minded that they wouldn't accept that there's anything outside of the material. There are some people who are so been spiritually wired that they struggle to stay in the material. And what you need to do is bring some balance to it, as much of this as you possibly can. I've had enough experiences of life to know that there are things that are outside my ability to explain. And some people would say, oh, that was a ghost. And I would say, well, if you want to call it that, you can call it that. I'm not so sure. When I came over to New Zealand and we moved into the very first house that we moved into, I had a very uncomfortable feeling in the house. And I got up one night, I jet lagged still, and I got up and I went and sat in the lounge. And as I sat there, I knew without any shadow of a doubt that I was not on my own in that lounge. I knew it.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And I knew that it was an old man in that house. And I knew that he wasn't happy with me being in the house. And this all sounds really weird. And I'm sat there on my own and I'm thinking, oh, this is a bit funky. And so I actually spoke out loud and I said, hey, mate, look, I've moved over here, my wife, my kids, we're starting a new life over here. I know this is your house, really grateful for you making us welcome here. We just want to get ourselves sorted out. So I hope you don't mind and we'll do the best that we can do while we're here. You know what? Gone, done, dusted, never felt it again. It was like everything just was lifted. Was that a ghost? Was that the energy or the spirit of that individual? I've made some inquiries and sure enough, there was an old man who had died there and all the rest of it. There was something there that I tapped into. I've been on jobs in the police where I've walked into rooms which I've had the most horrendous feeling about. And I've stepped out of those rooms. And then when I've stepped back in, I've had the same horrendous feeling and I've stepped out. And when I've done that, the temperature has also dropped in the room that I've stepped into. And I step out and go, flipping heck, no, it's really warm. And I step in and, oh, it's really cold, it's really warm. And you've got this to and fro. And then I find out that that is a room that children were abused in. And the atmosphere in the room was horrendous. And I've experienced that. I've experienced the feeling that can get into a place based on horrific things that have happened to people. I've experienced that. Is that ghostly? Is that energy? I personally think that's negative energy. I think that's energy that gets caught up in a place. And I think that that's what some people can be tuned to. They can actually pick up on those frequencies of that negative energy when they walk into something and go, ooh, I don't like this. And we have all done that when we walk into a room, and you'll have done that when you walk into a room where somebody is arguing with their friend, partner, whatever, and then as soon as you walk in, it's all gone very quiet, and you walk in, you go, ooh, there's a vibe in here.
You can cut it with a knife.
You can cut it with a knife, cut the atmosphere with a knife. And what do you mean by that? Where you have picked up on an energy that is totally unspoken, totally unseen, but you have tuned into it and you resonated with it. So there is so much stuff that goes on outside of the material world that we can tune into. I am just very cautious of making it sound like folk tale when I think it's far more than that. I think the whole thing is far bigger than that. It's far richer than that in so many ways. But yeah, I'm not sure about the whole ghost story sort of thing, though I've seen some strange stuff over the years. And the comment that you made earlier when we were talking about seeing shadows fleeting, man, that's something that happens all the time. All the time. I'm sat at home and I see someone walk past me, a shadow, or move along the floor, a shadow. And it catches my eye all the time. And I go, yeah, okay, I can see that. I can see that move. I can see that moving. I don't know what it is. It doesn't frighten me.
You also see orbs, flashes of light. I've often seen a green flashing light. You can sense it down the back of your neck. You rightly said the temperature changes. It's not to be feared. It's energy. Energy attracts energy. And as you said before, it was on our other channel, if you fear it, just imagine putting on a light. All the darkness disappears. But I don't like the word ghost. I call it spirit. Also, my daughter often comes across them. And like you said, she's been onto land. And the Maori have a big tradition of dealing with and clearing houses and clearing the land of energy. And she's done so locally. And she's had conversations with passed on Maori who were not happy with Pakeha coming in and doing something to what was called tapu land that they considered to be sacred. And as soon as the family knew this, they stopped doing it. And then they spoke to my daughter after the clearing and said, it's gone. It's like nothing's falling over anymore. We don't feel this sense of dread when we go to various places. It's disappeared. Make of that what you wish.
Well, that's right, because there's stuff out there. You know, when we lived in the UK, I had a year and a half when my daughter and my youngest boy were little, where I could not leave them in the bedroom on their own. Could not leave them in the bedroom. And I would lay on the floor between the two little beds. He was in his little cot and she was in her bed. And she would wake up screaming. She would be really distressed when she went to sleep. And there was nothing in the room. And this went on for a year and a half. And I got so flipping tired with it. Because I actually sat and watched her. I just sat next to her one night where she'd gone to sleep, and rather than, thank goodness she's asleep, I'll now creep downstairs. What I did was I sat and watched her to see what happened. And she lay there, and I'm never going to forget this. She lay there, and all of a sudden her eyes started doing that rapid eye movement, you know, like the old REM, real rapid eye movement. And then her eyes went wide open, and she looked straight past me and just screamed. And then she was awake. She would not stay in a room in the house with the door closed. Really weird, right? And this went on for a long time. And bear in mind, I was not spiritually minded in terms of going to a church or anything else at that time. I actually went to a church and got hold of a lady who has these senses. And I said to her, come around to my house. I just want you to just walk through my house and tell me what you think. So she walked through, she downstairs, went upstairs, a couple of rooms, and then she walked into the bedroom and she went, ooh, this is interesting. And I hadn't briefed her, I hadn't told her anything. She said, yeah, there's something not very nice in here. And I went, can you sort it out? Because I'm really tired of laying on the floor for a year and a half trying to get my kids to sleep. She said, yep, sort this out, not a problem. And I tell you now, she prayed in that room. I mean, I left her to get on with it. She prayed in that room. That very night, my kids went to sleep. No dramas, no problems. Gone, done. Now, I can't explain that, but I know I can tell you absolutely that is exactly what happened.
Most children at that age are tuned to the non-physical spirit. We educate them out of it.
Well, my daughter is still tuned to the non-physical spirit. She's probably a bit like your girl. She gets a sense of certain things, and she still does. Blow me. Whatever the lady did, it worked.
It does work. I was writing my second book in this house, and I went for a reading, and someone said, I'm picking up you've got an energy in the house, and there was a couple to come round and do a clearing. They came in, said, oh yeah, it's in the corner. They didn't know where I was doing my work. He said, you write in here, don't you? He said, yeah. It said, it's in the corner there. And they told it to leave. They went round the house just like this woman did. And she said, can you hear something? And for the first time, we all stopped, and all we heard was this. And she said, I'm now going to tell it to leave. And it went, leave. Perfect silence. And to this day, I don't know what to make of it. I didn't even know where it was bloody coming from. We were so used to this ticking away, none of us heard it. He said, that's been going on for some time, isn't it? He said, and it had. It'd been going on for weeks. It was trying to get our attention. I said to her afterwards, well, what is this spirit? He said, it's probably just someone down the road passed away and trying to communicate with you to say, it's me here, and we weren't listening. There was nothing malicious.
That's the thing, isn't it? Whether it's having conversation, sat with somebody and going, hey, I'm here, I'm not going to do any harm, just crack on. You know, my old nan years ago, they lived in quite a big house in the village that we grew up in. And it had quite a dark hallway, and it had quite a dark dining area that the stairs would lead down into, sort of the back of the house. It was always quite dark, always a bit moody. It was always a bit, you'd walk into it and you think, well, I've got to run up the stairs real fast type of thing, that sort of home. And my nan said to me, she said, don't worry if you feel something here. She said, it's just Harry. And I went, Harry? She said, yeah. She said, we've got a ghost here. Well, I've called him Harry. He's fine. He moves things around a bit sometimes, but he's really good. Don't worry about him. She said, sometimes you meet him on the stairs. Sure enough, there was a very clear sense of a person, a being, who we'll call Harry, in that house. Really strange. And there was an old lady who used to clean for them, and she was, oh yeah, it's Harry, yeah, he's moved that and he's done that, and I walked in there and I had to tell him off. Very odd. But it was definitely in that house. Definitely.
You fascinate me for one specific reason, and I do it myself. Weird, strange, odd. It shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be. Not if you believe that we live in a spiritual world and everything else. And it's weird and strange and odd because it's not what we see, what we recognise every day in the material world in which we live. And so that's why I phrase it like that. But I also accept that it's quite natural. Supernatural is an 18th century word, right? It's supernatural. Yeah. We've always viewed the world as being a spiritual world where the natural can be enhanced, so it becomes supernatural. But it's all there. It's always been there. It's always a spiritual world. It's always a supernatural world. And sometimes the natural is enhanced so that we can see the supernatural.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, ghosts. Couldn't we talk about that?
Yeah, I believe that they exist, but I wouldn't call them ghosts.
Yeah, and I would believe that spiritual beings exist as well, and I wouldn't call them ghosts in the sense that we understand ghosts in our culture. But I understand why people do give them a tag of ghost, because anything that is a disembodied spirit is a ghost in lots of people's imagination. But I'm not so sure that that's the best way to look at them.
And ultimately, my final point on this, we bodily die, but we don't die. We remain, and that I take that as a comfort.
Yep, the material wears out, but what makes you who you are, that goes on. Where that goes on, how that goes on, what that looks like, that's a matter of faith, I think. And that's a matter of faith belief and where you find your faith grounded.
Cool.
Happy?
Take care, mate.
No, that's great. Catch you later, fella. Look after yourself. Don't get spooked.